folks. My name is Philip Bates. Very proud of Pearce High School, if you don't know who I am. Thank you for being here tonight. We're looking forward to presenting to you and getting some feedback from you. And it is a very cool evening, almost cold. And it's nice and warm in here. It's good to see you. And I'm going to kick it to Dr. Wagner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bates. And good evening and welcome. And it's good to see all of you, especially after coming off a week of Thanksgiving and a lot of probably family time and a lot of food and a lot of missing work. And I know a lot of you are very busy and playing catch up today. So on behalf of the district, just thank you for making the decision to spend some time with us tonight. I'll frame up for you what we're here for tonight. We are really looking forward to this opportunity tonight because it gives our team, our trustees, and our administrative staff an opportunity to share with you some of the items that have been presented for consideration and proposal for our bond in 2016. But the more important part of this meeting is that it gives us an opportunity to hear from you, to hear your thoughts and your reflections and your questions regarding some of the items that have been proposed for consideration for bond 2016. And before we begin, I do want to make some introductions and give you an idea of who is here tonight. We do have 3 trustees who are here. We have our board president, Kim Caston, and we also have Chris Oliver and Dr. Hewitt. And I think probably our trustees are not strangers to you. And so they're here to hear your comments and to hear your reflections and to hear your questions. And we also have several administrative staff. We have our Deputy Superintendent, Tony Harper, who is over finance and operations. We have our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Jeannie Stone, who is over the education side of the house. And we have Sam Hayes, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Career and Technical Ed, as well as Technology. We also have Kara Alton. Kara? Okay, back in the back, our Executive Director of Communications and Public Relations. And I see another Assistant Superintendent, Tabitha Branham, over Secondary Education. And we also have a number of other staff members who are here and present tonight as well. But let me tell you how we'll form the meeting. Mrs. Casson is going to kick us off and share with you her perspective as a board member and as a board trustee, and share with you some information about our priority goals for the district. And then Mr. Harper is going to share information regarding finances and bonds and some of the items that have been presented for consideration regarding growth and capacity. And then Dr. Stone is going to talk to you about enrichment options. And this is really the area in which we need your feedback, because our enrichment options really take us, they are transformational in nature, and they take us from a current state of where we are right now to enrich opportunities for all of our students as well as our staff members. So I would ask that you think about that tonight as we begin the presentation. I do want to make one comment. We've had a couple meetings in this feeder pattern so far, and one of the big questions and one of the big concerns I think up front was the location of a proposed item for consideration of a multi-purpose facility. And I just want you to know up front, at the beginning of the meeting, we've addressed those, we've heard your concerns, we know that that was something that was perplexing to many of you in terms of our initial proposal. And so we are looking at an alternate site, and one that I think was recommended by staff here, as well as patrons and parents here in this area. So Mr. Harper will be sharing that information with you as well. So I wanted to put that out in front of the meeting. We're definitely looking at an alternate site, and one which I think will be much well received. So with that, I would ask you to hold your questions until the end. We've got a lot of information to share, and I would guess that a lot of your questions might be answered during the presentation. So are you good holding your questions until the end? Okay, I promise you we will stay and answer all questions, and if we need to stay after the meeting, we can do that as well. So with that said, Mrs. Caston, I'd love for you to make some remarks on behalf of the board.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. For those of you that our paths have not crossed over the years, I'm Kim Caston. My son graduated in 2006 and 2010 from J.J. Pearce High School. My journey through the Pearce feeder area included Bowie Elementary, Parkville Junior High, and Pearce High School, where I served 5 terms as a PTA president along the way. My husband Bob and I were Athletic Booster Club presidents, and we were also one of the 5 founding members of the Pearce Excellence in Education Foundation. So our Mustang roots run deep, and it is my pleasure and delight to be here tonight. Before we start, I do want to make one more introduction, and that is a former colleague of mine, Karen Ellis, who served on the school board for 15 years. And whose heart for the RISD is still strong, so we appreciate you being here tonight. You know, as school board president, I'm asked often, why am I so confident about the Richardson ISD? You know, why is this still such a great place to be? And what I want to do, Frank, tonight is I'll give you 3 reasons why I have confidence in the RISD. The first is the destination or the objective that our Board of Trustees has set out. Like many of you who are sitting here tonight, like my parents, when they moved to Dallas 42 years ago, they were told literally on the plane, oh, you're moving to Dallas, you need to live in the Richardson ISD so your kids can go to Richardson schools. And that is still today the objective of this board, is that we continue to be a destination district for families, not only in the North Texas area and the Texas area, but if you desire to live in Dallas-Fort Worth from anywhere, you want to raise your kiddos in the RISD. So the direction of the district. The second thing that I'm confident in is the leadership team of this district. You know, our leaders, and you'll hear from them tonight, stand on the shoulders of those who came before them, including Dr. J.J. Pearce, including Dr. Ball, including Dr. Carolyn Bucare, and now under the leadership of our superintendent, Dr. Kay Wagner. So we have confidence in the leadership in our district. And then the third area that makes me confident and know that this is a great place to be are our strategic goals, our priority goals for this district, both short and in the future. And there's 3 of them that I want to make sure that you know that you can connect this bond to. The first is our academic goal. We've set out an academic goal that says all students will graduate with either 3 hours of college credit or a license or certification in the career area of their choice that will pay them a living wage. And that's important because, like my children, many of our graduates come back to live here. So we want to ensure that they have the training available either to earn the seat in college or university of their choice or in a career field that will pay them a living wage. Our second goal is a goal for our people. And all of you know that the success of your organization is dependent upon the skills and the success of your people. So we've set out a talent management goal that addresses compensation, flexible career paths, rigorous professional development, and developing leadership capacity for our teachers, our staff, and our administrators. And then our third priority goal is our priority goal for this bond 2016. And the important part of this priority goal was this, is that we wanted to be thoughtful, intentional, and strategic about crafting the items that we were going to go to our community and ask them to invest on behalf of our kids. So those are our 3 goals. That's why I'm confident in our district. And let me talk about why we're here tonight as a part of Bond 2016. This was a process that started well over a year ago with the Board of Trustees and the senior leadership team. And we started with one key question. What do we want for our students? So over the course of the last 18 months, we've had discussions in the areas of curriculum instruction, fine arts, athletics, extra and co-curriculum. And instead of taking you through the 25 different areas that we talked about, let me summarize it for you in 3 basic objectives. We want our kids, we want our students to compete and win in the classroom, on the performance stage, and on the competition field. And when we say compete, we don't mean we want our students to compete against those kiddos at Richardson, Berkner, and Lake Highlands. For those of you whose kids have already gone through, you know that our kids are competing against, here locally, against kids who go to Plano West, they go to Highland Park, they go to the Frisco School, South Lake Carroll, Jesuit. In Austin, it's Austin Westlake, Lake Travis, but they also compete nationally. Schools of kids in Corona Del Mar, Highland Park in Chicago. Our kids are competing with kids from all 50 states. So we want them to compete and win for their college and university of their choice or for their chosen career path. And so it's this bond that's going to give us the tools, the technology, and the facility upgrades in order for our children to be successful in their global world, which looks a whole lot different from our global world, for me, 40 years ago. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It's a great night for the Pearce area. It's a great night for the Richardson ISD. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Operations, Mr. Tony Martin.
this, we want to spend a little time to give you a little background. This is an agenda as far as the items we would like to try to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of bonds in the district finances. Bonds are debt, is really what they are. Bonds can be used to purchase anything that's considered capital in nature. And what does that mean? It means anything with a useful life of a year or more. And so prior to 2001, RISD used bonds to pay for constructing new buildings and major projects, but we didn't necessarily use them for every single item that we were qualified for bonds. A lot of the roof replacement, HVAC, equipment replacement, a lot of the technology, we just didn't use it for that. We used our operating dollars to pay for those kinds of items. And what happened over the years, due to the constraints of the school finance system in Texas, there were fewer and fewer dollars that were available for us to be able to use to pay for those capital items out of our operating budget. What that did was it forced our operating tax rate up to the maximum, and then it still provided fewer and fewer dollars, so we had to defer a lot of maintenance. And that really culminated in 2001 with us forming a community bond advisory committee to look at that and look at some of what they thought our bond guiding principles should be as we go forward and consider these types of things. What they wanted us to do is develop a long-range facility plan. So what we did is contracted with an outside firm to come in and assess all of the buildings throughout the district, identify all of the deferred maintenance that had occurred over the years, and use that to develop a long-range facility plan. That became instrumental in the development of all the bonds that have occurred since then. So what we did is we simply took the oldest buildings first. The 2001 bond, we took the buildings that were built in the 1950s or earlier. The 2006 bond, we took the buildings that were built in the 60s. The 2011 bond, we addressed most of the buildings built in the 70s, not all. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But that was the plan for that. They also asked that we develop a long-range debt plan, which we've done. And part of that debt plan needed to include capacity at some type of an interval. We use 5 years. There's nothing magic about 5 years, but we feel like it's a reasonable interval. You don't want to go more frequently than that because you have something, it's called voter fatigue. If we were to come to you every single year with an election, at some point you're going to get tired of that, and you're going to say, you guys need to develop a little longer-range plan in 12 months. If we go longer than 5 years, the problem with that is it's difficult already to try to project costs out 5 and 6 years from now. If you extend it even farther, it becomes more and more difficult to accurately project those costs. So we've landed on 5 years as part of that interval. The other thing that they asked us to do is develop that capacity and also to match the life of the asset and the life of the liability. Because one of the things that our community bond advisory group felt really strongly about was, and the best example is a computer. They did not want us to pay for a computer or something that's considered a short-lived asset with long-term debt. So think of it for you personally. It would be like you taking out a 30-year mortgage to pay for a car. I mean, financially it sounds pretty good at the beginning because your payments are much lower, but then what happens is after about 5 to 10 years, that car's not there anymore, but you're still paying for it. And so that the same logic applies for us. They did not want us to pay for a computer with 30-year, 25-year debt. So what we do is match the life of the asset with the life of the liability. That means that we are aggressively paying down our debt. We're paying down in excess of 25% in 5 years or less. We pay down in excess of 50% of our debt in 10 years or less. So we're roughly matching the life of the asset with the life of the liability for a variety of reasons. But the initial reason was to comply with that community directive and request as part of our bond guiding principle. What that also does for us, though, by paying it down so aggressively, is it creates capacity for us in those 5-year intervals. We have one of the most aggressive, quickest debt repayment schedules of any district in the state. And that also kind of dovetails in with one of the last bond guiding principles that they had was for us to maintain a strong underlying credit rating. Most districts in the state of Texas are able to apply for the permanent school fund guarantee, which is a AAA rating in the state of Texas. But each district also has an individual credit rating on top of that permanent school fund guarantee. So our credit rating works a lot like your credit rating would. The higher the credit rating, the lower your cost of debt. The lower our cost of debt, the more value we can provide to our taxpayers. Our RISD has the highest underlying credit rating of any district in the state of Texas, and there are only 4 other districts out of 1,038 that have as high of a bond rating as RISD does. So we worked hard to try to value and honor those bond guiding principles. We have adjusted those over the years. We've expanded them. We have a community bond advisory group that meets now. We have several members of that group that are in attendance tonight. And sorry that you've heard this presentation, some of you 2-3 times. We'll try to keep it fresh for you. But that group has reflected on those guiding principles to make sure that they're still relevant and that still applicable. We've adjusted those over time. One of the things we want to point out is, in addition to bonds, we do have other means of financing projects. A couple of good examples would be the expansion at Mohawk Elementary School and the expansion that's underway at Prairie Creek Elementary School, their feeder pattern. Both of those neither one of those are funded from bonds. Those needs present themselves, they don't always present themselves right when you're developing a bond package. So we use something that we call our capital projects funds to pay for both of those projects. That fund was created a number of years ago by our board what we did was took any excess funds, when we have a surplus of our budget, if our revenues are higher than projected or our expenditures are lower than projected, that positive variance or that surplus, we've moved that over at the end of the year into this capital projects fund to give the board the discretion to be able to address projects like this. And largely what it's been used for over the last several years is to address enrollment growth, just like we did at Mohawk and are doing at Prairie Creek. We've had a number of schools that we've added classrooms onto, and we funded all of that through capital projects fund. Of course, we could always use our operating dollars as another source of meeting needs, and we have something within the operating budget that's called fund balance. It's a simplistic way to think of it. It's like a savings account, but the actual definition of it is the difference between assets and liabilities. And so there's some reservations and what we call reservations within that fund balance, specifically for any extraordinary construction and other items that might come up. So we have the wherewithal to be able to address things like unanticipated enrollment growth that don't coincide with a bond package development. We want to give you a little information on the 2011 bond, and I'm going to ask Brian to show you a short video on that does a little better job than I could explaining it.
In 2011, Richardson ISD voters approved $170 million in bond funds for our district. Thanks to your support, Bond 2011 is making a difference in the educational lives of our students. RISD schools require continued capital maintenance to provide safe, comfortable, and functional learning spaces. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, roofs, interiors, clinics, mechanical projects, plumbing, security, electrical, and energy management systems were refreshed, upgraded, or replaced. Fine arts and athletics were also addressed through work done at all 4 high schools' auditoriums, renovations of all 8 junior high fine arts areas, as well as new equipment and uniforms for athletics. Playgrounds underwent safety upgrades and dated equipment was replaced. The Environmental Studies Center, visited by thousands of RISD students annually, had improvements made to the pond area, including a sustainable water source. All schools had some type of facility update. 5,000 tons of HVAC equipment was replaced, about the same tonnage as 125 18-wheeler trucks. 57,700 square feet of corridor flooring was replaced, about the same amount of flooring it would take to cover a football field. And Bond 2011 made it possible to replace 679,023 square feet of roofing, a little more roofing than what is on AT&T Stadium. Technology comprised 31% of Bond 2011. Multiple projects were completed to allow technology to be integrated into all subject areas to provide real-world experiences for students. Every single facility received technology upgrades. Students in the digital age learned in different ways than decades ago, and designs that worked well in the 1950s through the 1970s aren't ideal to serve the needs of learners in 2015. Bond 2011 impacted all 55 campuses. Of those, 2017 had major capital projects. As we close out work on Bond 2011, we pause to say,
Thank you.
Thank you for voting.
Thank you for investing in my future.
Thank you for supporting the bond.
Thank you so much for supporting public education in our community.
Thank you for caring about our schools.
Great, thanks, Brian. As Ms. Caston mentioned, we've been working on this for well over a year. This is a timeline, and this is also in your materials as well, to give you just a sense of what's going on with the bond. Started really in the fall of 2014, and looking at those bond guiding principles and making sure that we were addressing, including items that address the vision, mission, goals of the district, our profile that we want for students and staff, and then refreshing those bond guiding principles. We moved into the planning piece, and so what we did was updated that facility assessment plan that we had created a number of years ago. We've done that every 5 years just to make sure that it's still relevant. And then we've also walked buildings with each one of our building principals to determine what their priorities are, and then included that. This process is a little different than what we've used for the last few cycles. What we heard from the community in the 2011 bond was that people wanted to have an opportunity to provide some input into the package that was being considered before it became finalized. What we had done in the prior bonds is we would get a list of proposals that would come through. We would go through a vetting process and refine that list down to recommendation that would be made to the board call election, and then we'd go out to the community and share that information and provide information about what was included in that package. This bond, what we're doing is going through the spanking listening tour, and we're giving you more raw data. These are the requests that haven't really been vetted completely. So these are requests that come from program managers from campuses and from all these different folks to get your input on what you would like to see included, anything else you'd like to see included, and then what we'll do is we'll culminate all of those pieces of feedback and share that with the board, and then they will call an election in February and determine the dollar amount and the number of propositions that would be considered. Historically, we have used single proposition election. We're certainly not limited to that. If you voted in the City of Richardson election in November, they had 4 propositions. So certainly we could do number 1 through however many, and that would be up to the board to make that final determination. At that point, what would happen is we change gears a little bit and move away from the thank you listening tour into more informational meetings, trying to just educate the community about what's included in the bond that was called by the board. That would culminate with a bond election in May of 2016. What we've done for the 2016 bond is we've broken it into some categories just to make it a little easier for folks to digest. The first category is maintenance, capacity construction, enrichment. What we've also done is develop some bond scenarios, and you should have a copy of that in the material as well, to show everyone options at different levels, how much capacity we have to issue debt without increasing the debt tax rate. In 2011, that was $170 million that we could issue without increasing the debt tax rate. That always seems to confuse some folks. They think we're trying to trick them about how do you issue more debt without increasing the debt tax rate. It goes back to that debt management plan where we're aggressively repaying the debt. It's because we pay it down so quickly, it builds capacity in those 5 variables. So that's what creates the capacity here. In 2016, that capacity number is $235 million that we could issue without increasing the debt tax rate. So we've shared some different scenarios. We've shown you what is the additional value of a penny of increased debt tax effort, 5 pennies, 10 pennies, and then the maximum. We are currently at 30 cents on the debt tax rate. We have a maximum capacity of 50 cents on the debt tax rate, so we're about 60%. As far as our total debt issuance capacity, we are well below, I think we're at about 40% of what our total debt capacity is under the Texas Education Code. So we have lots of capacity and room there, but we want to share that information with everyone. The maintenance category, these are items that we would expect to be reached in the useful life within the next 5 years. So these are the things like the roofs and the air conditioning systems and the plumbing systems, and electrical, and technology. Some of the computers that we reach in the useful life within that 5-year band. We just go out and take that long-range facility plan, we grab that next 5-year band of items that will reach into useful life, the components that will reach into useful life within that period of time. So that's what's in this category. We've broken it out because we really didn't feel like there would be a lot of debate of if the roof at an elementary school is going to be end of life within this 5-year period, we need to replace that. We really didn't think most people would disagree with that. So that's part of why we parsed it up. We felt like most of the discussion would be on the enrichment items we wanted to include. But certainly we can talk about these as well. On the technology side, we don't automatically take laptops and computers and throw them in the dumpster at the end of 5 years. Ms. Hayes and her team do a great job of trying to extend the useful life of all of our equipment. So the items that are included in the technology in this category, it's not every item that would be 5 years old, but everything that's in this category of technology are items that are 5 years or older that have reached into useful life. We've specifically mentioned athletics and fine arts, and some folks wonder, well, why aren't you listing other curricular areas like math and science and those types of areas? It's not that we value athletics and fine arts more, it's just you got to go back to what bonds can be used for. They can only be used for capital items, items that have useful life of a year or more. Areas like math and social studies and English just are not capital intensive areas. So if you look at that summary page that's included in your handouts, there are line items for each of those curricular areas, and there's smaller amounts, and that's why. Because there just simply are fewer items that qualify within those areas for bonds. For fine arts, for example, uniforms, we capitalize those. A marching band uniform has a useful life of 10 years is what we use. And for those of you that have kids that are involved in marching band, when it gets out there about year 8 or 9, it's starting to get a little tired. And certainly by 10, it's been very tired. So that's what we include here, just as an example. On the capacity construction, 2 pieces here. We have 2 schools, Richardson High and Lake Highlands High School, that the enrollment projections of those 2 schools will exceed the capacity for those buildings within this 5-year period. So we're including dollars to provide construction at those sites, to add 24 classrooms to Lake Highlands High School and 21 classrooms to Richardson High within this 5-year band to address the projected enrollment growth. And you remember when we talked about the 2011 bond, we addressed most of the schools built in the 70s. There were 3 left. It's Aiken, those are Aiken, Prestonwood, and Yale. And those communities have been very patient. They were the last in line to receive renovation work, and we feel like we have a commitment to those communities and want to honor that commitment. So we pulled that. We haven't included those dollars in enrichment. We have them as a separate category for that reason. So what that would mean is, has anybody not been in Prestonwood or Aiken? Anybody not been in one of those 2 schools? Is your home school, let's think of it like Mohawk. If your home school is Mohawk, most people have probably been in Mohawk or Prairie Creek in this area. If you were to take the office from the front of the building and put it in the middle of the building, that is Prestonwood Elementary School. And so it's difficult to control access for visitors that are coming in. Any visitor that comes into Prestonwood or Aiken, they walk past hallways of students to get to the office and check in. So we feel like we've got systems in place there, they're not ideal. So what we want to do is move the office at those 2 schools to the front of the building to be able to control access. We want to be able to give them an ADA accessible clinic that they do not have, that all of our other schools do have. And we want to be able to give them an ADA accessible restroom as part of that clinic. And then renovate the office space to make it a more usable space as part of it. It would also involve renovations. Yale doesn't have that same configuration. They have more of a standard configuration on where the office is located. But they still require refresh as far as the common areas, hallways, walls, floor, ceilings that we've already done at every other school. And then each of those schools has something called pod classrooms, which was an idea in the 70s that you would have, it's groups of 4 classrooms that are basically open to one another. So a teacher in one room can hear what's going on in the other 3. And most teachers absolutely hate it. It's difficult, it's very distracting. So what we would do is eliminate those pod classrooms and give them that true separation in individual classroom space. The last item is our enrichment, and I'm going to ask Dr. Stone to come up. We're really going to talk to you about 4 major areas on enrichment, and you're certainly not limited to those 4, but all of the other enrichment items combined are smaller than the smallest of these 4. So we felt like these were the 4 that we really wanted to get additional feedback, but when we get to the comment section, you're certainly not limited to these 4. If you feel like there's another area we haven't addressed, or another area that's not within your bond package that you want to prioritize, you're certainly able to do that. We're going to talk about those 4 largest ones right now. Dr. Stone?
Good evening. How great to be with you tonight to just come and share lots of information, but we really want to listen to you, and we're going to do that tonight in a couple of ways. At the end of when I finish, we're going to have an opportunity for you to come and talk, or for you to take a microphone and just ask any questions or make any comments. And the second way that we want to listen to you, hopefully you all picked up a small index card that I want you to take a look at for just a second, because this is an opportunity where when you leave tonight, we can hear from every single one of you. We hope that you will share your comments with us. Listed on that index card, you'll see 4 enrichment options, and that's part of what I'm going to talk to you about tonight, are the 4 enrichment options that are right now proposed to be included, but we will make that decision after we've heard from all of the people we're going to hear from across the whole community. So the first enrichment option that I'm going to talk to you about is one that will impact 100% of our students at every single one of our campuses across the entire district, and that is technology. And for that, we're going to hear from a video that's been narrated by, she's been introduced to you, our Assistant Superintendent for Technology, Sandra Hayes.
When you walk into our classrooms today, many of them will look like the ones that we entered when we were in high school many years ago. You'll see desks, you'll see tables, chairs, a teacher in front of the classroom, sometimes still a pencil sharpener. We know that paper and pencil will still be used in our classrooms throughout the school district. With technology, though, we're bringing a new level of tool to the student. It allows equal access for all students. It allows them to have the opportunities to go out and research and find answers, and to be able to produce their own learning. So they may produce a video, they may produce a presentation for the classroom, they may produce a paper. We try to always bring in industry-level software so the students get a real global perspective on what they're working on, and when they go out into the workforce, they will see that same software. In our planning for Bond 2016, we could put devices such as laptops, desktops, iPads, tablets, Chromebooks. We could add additional software pieces for our students and teachers. We could make a seamless transition wirelessly from the content on the devices to an interactive short throw projector for students to be able to see that content.
So technology, the first enrichment option that's listed there, you can see the dollar amount there proposed is for $23,416,700. And again, this would impact every one of our campuses across the entire district. When you think about technology, and in terms of the enrichment portion, you may be thinking, well wait, Mr. Harkleroad, he talked about technology earlier, so I want to kind of clarify the difference. In the maintenance portion, as he described, we have lots of computers in our campuses right now that will reach their end of life, and that is just included in the maintenance portion. The enrichments, though, are those that our teachers and our campuses have asked. They've said basically we need more technology in our classroom. We need more devices in the hands of our students to be able to do the types of activities that our classrooms are requiring. And so, again, all schools impacted, elementary, junior high, and high school. And this basically is about having the right computers and the right devices at the right time when our teachers need them, when our students need them. And it would also create what we call a classroom complement, so that in every one of our 2,447 classrooms, every teacher would have a great device, a great projector, and that we would have many, many more devices to be able to put into the hands of our students. And so you can see, and you may visit the poster that's over there to see some of them that are on there, but it really is so that at any given time across the entire district, when students need technology, they will have technology. and we were even looking to have a lot more devices so that our students can check out devices and have them at their disposal. And I think one of my best kind of visuals for you is this cart that you have here in the middle. Many of our classrooms have a cart in the middle of their classroom that has a projector, and the teachers put their devices on them. And it can really be instructive to students around as they're walking around with cords. And as part of the enrichment, we would go in again to all of our 47 classrooms and mount the projector on the ceiling so that teachers would not be tied to it with cords and things like that. So that's just one example of what we would do in terms of an enrichment. If we just handled the maintenance portion, we would just be able to go in and just replace the carts that are on the projectors that are on the carts. And so we have a lot of things that are listed there, just to put more devices and more enrichments under the category of technology. The next item of enrichment that we're going to talk to you about is in terms of transforming our libraries. And there's a video for that. Libraries are our largest classrooms in most all of our campuses. And so right now they're being underutilized, and so we want them to be a space that all of our students will want to go, that will be welcoming to them, and can really stimulate learning for all of our students at every campus. Our libraries have the potential to be an extension of our classrooms. And we know that children learn best when they're able to be active and engaged with the content. Bond 2016 would come in and really redesign our libraries to be places where students would feel welcome to come in and communicate and collaborate, and that type of learning would be both encouraged and supported. The transformation to these libraries would be such that we would come in and replace all of the furniture with mobile shelves that could be moved by our librarian to open up the space, smaller circulation desks that would be very different. We would bring in different types of furniture, like teaming tables, stackable chairs. How often do y'all go into the library? And they said they don't go into the library that much. It's not necessarily the hub of the school that we would like it to be. And so I asked them some of the reasons why, and they, said, well, it's kind of old, and as Mr. Hargrove would say, it's kind of his dad's library. And so the idea here is to really go in to transform our libraries and to make them places that our students would want to go and hang out. Not necessarily only for that reason, though. We want them to go there and for the spaces to be transformed so that they can be used for different types of purposes. Again, all of our schools would be impacted. This is all 55 campuses that we're looking at, elementary, junior high, and high school, and the dollar amount there of $23 million to go in and to really recreate these spaces. Let me talk to you a little bit about some of the reasons of some of the reasons why that we want to do this. Again, I say in the video, it's the largest classroom for all of our campuses. And we want our students to be going in and really be doing different types of innovative types of projects. And what our teachers and what our librarians tell us is that the space really just makes it so that it's difficult to get in there and do a lot. So we would be going in, again, and changing out the furniture, putting in different types of tables, lots more accessibility for students, particularly our high schools, to go and just plug in their own devices and work. We're thinking about extending the hours to where they would be open earlier in the mornings and later in the evenings so that students would have a place to go in. And if they didn't have technology, they could go in and check it out from the librarian as well. So these are just some pictures, again, of how we would transform the libraries to make them into the engaging spaces where a lot more can be done. Because what everyone is telling us is we are listening across the district is they're being underutilized. And if we could transform them, they would really turn into an innovative space with a lot more purpose, again, for every single one of our students across the district. So the next enrichment option I'm going to talk to you about is career and technical education and expansion of JROTC. And here's another video.
Career and technical education used to be called vocational education. So for many of us, going through our high school years, we took home economics and shop classes. Today, career and technical education expands 16 different federal clusters and allows pathways in over 300 different career options. We have 14,000 plus current enrolled students here in RISD in our CTE programs. The end result for CTE students in RISD is to obtain a license, certificate, or certification that leads them to employment. We researched and looked at the labor market statistics for our community and what jobs would be available for our students over the next 10 years. We identified 4 different priority sets of career clusters that students would need to have experience in order to go directly into the job fields in our area. These career clusters include things like health science, teacher training, IT and STEM, and business, finance, and marketing. Most of the CTE courses require a unique facility in order for the job skills to be obtained by the students. So there is a recommendation to renovate the existing classroom space at Berkner High School and Pearce High School, and to build some existing spaces at Richardson and Lake Highlands to accommodate the required coursework that the students will need. We would like to expand the junior ROTC program to the remaining 3 high schools in RISD. We have 1 unit currently active at Berkner High School with about 105 students currently enrolled. While it is associated with our military, it is a leadership development program for students. We would designate a classroom, renovate if necessary, and then provide all the equipment and uniforms that the students would need to be successful in those programs.
So CTE, career and technical education, definitely in support of that goal, which I'll say one more time. You heard it from Ms. Caston, you heard it in the video. 3 hours college credit or a career or certification for every graduate in Richardson ISD, and that is a big goal. And currently, we have classrooms that need to be renovated to be able to support that goal. We need to redesign our classrooms to really mirror the workplace that a lot of these jobs and these programs are educating the students on. So you can see it would impact all 4 of our high schools. You can see the dollar amount there of $9 million. And we really have there's a lot of work to be done across our campuses, and we're going to reach that goal, and it definitely will be that we have to redesign our classrooms. And then JROTC. Probably when you were in high school, and I was in high school, we had a large JROTC. And this is listed as a potential for this bond based on input from across the community, that we don't only want to have JROTC at Berkner, but provided for all of our students as an opportunity at each one of our 4 high schools. There's so many benefits that JROTC can provide to our students in terms of scholarships, in terms of advancing them in rank if they do decide to join the military. And so this would, at the cost of $548,500 added at all 4 of our campuses. And the last enrichment item that you have listed on your card, and we want to have you to hear about, are our multi-purpose facilities. And we have a video here that is narrated by our Director of Athletics and our Director of Fine Arts.
I think the first thing you're going to see an opportunity for there to be 4 walls and a roof and a cover, ventilation system that allows kids to either stay warm or to be able to stay cooler than they would be if it was in August when we were outside, either on a grass field, astroturf field, or a concrete field. You're going to see an opportunity to be able to segment the practice facility into different arenas for multiple groups to use at the same time. Currently, our marching bands rehearse on concrete practice fields, which are parking lots at each of the 4 campuses, 90% of the time around there. When those marching bands start in June and work all the way through the months of November, the pavement's getting as high as 125, 130 degrees when you take a thermometer out there. And then you speak in regards to our drill teams, to our cheerleaders, to our country and western dance teams. They're basically using whatever facility they can get into, whether that's juggling inside of a gym, whether that's trying to get outdoors. But currently the situation is we're trying to find the best place to put folks, and that's either outdoors for many of them in a parking lot, or that's indoors on a gym floor for the most part.
We lost last year due to the elements over 160 competitions or practice opportunities. And to make those opportunities up, sometimes we have to be very creative. We may get on a bus and go to other facilities, or we just didn't get to practice. What education this would do for us is allow us to practice more groups at one time to shorten that workday. The actual facility that we're looking at is a rubber field, softball field, baseball field, a soccer field. We have a 4-lane track to work on starts, to work on sprints, to work on many things to reach all aspects of our 17 varsity sports. All those team sports are playing on something that has a GMAX rating that has been approved to prevent concussions. So we're putting them in an environment that is safe. We're not new in requesting this. There's over 50 of these in the immediate North Texas Metroplex area.
You know, I could easily see walking in, seeing a 300-member marching band practicing. I could see right next door, you've got a full athletic opportunity for strength and conditioning. Next door to them, you're going to have the drill team possibly. You've got this multitude of different things going on at the exact same time in a safe and secure environment.
So our multi-purpose facilities option would impact all 4 of our high schools. There would be one at each one of our 4 high schools. You can see the programs that would be impacted. We have done a lot of research, and I have heard that this is an item that has been talked about for years. Whether or not we would build with one at this bond, again, is up to the community, but the reason why it's being proposed is because we know that so many high schools are now, when you build a high school, they're just building one of these as one of the pieces of the facility, much like you would build a cafeteria or an auditorium. So that is why we're putting it out to the community to see the time now for that to be added on to this bond package. You can see the total there is $81,520,195, again, for all 4 of each high school. These are the initial locations considered, and again, when we had our one of our last meetings here at Pearce, we talked about some different possibilities, and so we certainly want to hear from you tonight about how you feel about those possibilities again. Again, we've done a lot of research for years, from what I understand, just since I've been here, we've done a lot of research and have learned that these types of facilities at high schools are usually used about 10 hours a day by all different students going in, even PE classes are using them. Let me give you some of the specs of the size it would be. An 80-yard football field would be inside the building itself. The building itself would be approximately 130 yards in total length and 60 yards in width. Aside from the football field, or the football field itself, there would be some additional storage space for fine arts. There would be a new weight room, and also included in the cost of the whole project would be to take the existing weight room at the high school and to repurpose it so that it could be used for wrestling. And so there would be some different storage spaces, and I think, have I left anything out? Mr. Harper is kind of the expert on this one, and we're here to answer any questions about that. But so those are 4 options, enrichment options that we've talked to you about tonight. We want to hear from you about any of those or anything we've left out or just any kinds of questions. So I'm going to ask Mr. Harbaugh to come back up. And at this time, we're going to open it up to hear from you, because that is why we're here. We shared a lot of information. But what is important to us is that we hear from you. Any questions, don't leave with any questions left unanswered. So, who would be first to want to speak out? Let us hear from you. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
If you could go back to a few slides earlier with the look at the existing facilities.
Which option?
Under the multi-purpose.
Oh, okay.
I think there was an outside view.
I think it was in the video. It may have been in the video.
Good.
Okay.
How high would this be?
Approximately 60 feet, 60 feet,
Which
at
is-
its peak.
Which is 6 stories. Correct?
Maybe 5.
5 or 6. How high is Pearce right now?
It would be 35, 40 feet at the highest, I believe. Now, at the eave, it would be about 30 feet. So on the sides, it would be 30 feet, and then at the peak, it would be.
We're looking at a significant additional height.
Yes.
To me, that seems a little extreme. But others talking.
Hi, I'm Emily Nguyen. I am one of the nurses at Pearce High School. I'd like to speak to two things under the maintenance for technology that involve health services. One is in RISD, we are very lucky that every school has at least one AED. At Pearce, we have 4 plus 1 that travels with band, I believe. We want to relocate these AEDs. Many of them are located behind locked doors. They should be in recessed cabinets.
Somebody didn't like that.
Test, test. Awesome.
Sorry about that.
Speaking of technology.
These AEDs really need to be located in recessed cabinets. That means cabinets into the wall in common locations that don't require a door, so that they can be accessible after school, during games, by anyone. And let's see, yeah, cabinets like the fire extinguishers, they'll need to be at a certain height to comply with the ADA. And so our emergency equipment that we have on our campus and that we maintain, that we, spend money for batteries every year, we need to make sure that it's accessible. Another thing is our audiology equipment. So we do vision and hearing screening at all the elementary schools and some junior highs. The nurses are carrying all this equipment themselves to these screenings. We flock about 10 or 12 of us to each school when we do this. And our equipment is extremely integrated. Some of the machines are from the 80s. Some of them don't have technical support anymore because they're so old. Not every nurse has one, and they're basic things that we need to make sure that our students can hear and to identify problems like ear infections or hearing loss and sort of make proper referrals. So those are the two things that I would like to advocate for health services and maintenance, making the AEDs accessible and purchasing new, every nurse needs this equipment, it's in Eden's fridge. Thank you.
We've had, my brother and my sisters, there are 5 of us, and we could just go back to 69 to 75 era. We've had 6 Hollands over the last 20 years, or years. If there's anybody that's got more out of this in our family, I'd like to meet them. RSD has always been fiscally responsible, so whatever you guys want to do is okay with me. But there's a difference between being fiscally responsible and sometimes just cheap. The biggest concern I've had in watching school districts that we've been through the last, 50 years, but the last 20 particularly, is our teachers. Nothing's more important to these kids than the teachers make things work. It's way more important than the facilities. Facilities are important, but most people don't realize, according to all the stats that y'all do every year, our coaches are paid anywhere from 25% to 50% less than districts nearby. Your football coaches, which are the highest paid ones, are paid 25% less than the Planos and the other schools. So we have a huge turnover problem. So I realize bonds aren't what we use for expenses, I think somebody said, but if you're not going to pay the coaches, don't put the facility in there. It's a waste of money. So that's the most important thing, is how you pay your teachers and how you pay your coaches. You pay your soccer coach $2,800 a year. The take those kids and teach them soccer. That's shameful. Now, in the Pearce right now, we're 37% Hispanic, with our largest Hispanic population is our freshman class. In 3 years from now, we'll be 50% Hispanic in the school. So a couple of questions are you going to do anything about paying the coaches on the operational expense side? I don't know how you do that. We're paid well below market, and our turnover is ridiculous. The second thing is, if you put a bond together like this, I'm on my last holiday, we've had 6 of the last 20 years, so I'm done. But as you do this for the next 4 or 5 years, the community that really needs to be looked at is the minority community. Y'all think that into account?
Well, let me take the first part of that, and then Dr. Stone, the second part. And as you mentioned, bond dollars can be used to pay for operating expenses.
Right.
So teacher salaries cannot be paid for on bonds, it's illegal. So what we're really here tonight to do feedback on is what's included in the proposed in the 2016 bond is really the objective. So certainly looking at coach stipends, we increased the coach stipends this year. We look at that on an annual basis, I believe. Dr. Medina is here, who's our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, and that's certainly something we'll continue to look at. We want to make sure that we're competitive. That was an issue, and that's part of why we increased it this year. Now, as far as taking into account minority growth in regards to what?
Well, the facilities primarily. I mean, sports are changing over the next 5 years of what's going to be important in that community. The goal of school is to get kids ready for college and keep them engaged. One of the things we've done a great job with Pearce doing is keeping kids engaged in extracurricular activities. I don't care if they win or they lose, kids stay engaged. So how do we keep, as demographics change, how do we keep these kids engaged in the school experience and want to go to college?
Well, and I think that a couple of the enrichment priorities that Dr. Stone went through speak exactly to it. The technology enrichment, that's to provide more access to devices for more kids on a daily basis. So that touches 100% of the kids. And you've got some of our lower income students, whether they be minority or non-minority, it's the low socioeconomic group, may not have access to technology that your kids have access to and that my kids have access to. This would afford them more accessibility here. On the career technology education, you've got not every kid's going to go to college. They may not have the opportunity to do that. So that speaks more to the low socioeconomic group. But expanding the CTE offerings that we have available for students allow them to get certifications and choose a career path that would be meaningful for them. So I think that there are some things that we talked about already that speak directly to that. We're trying to be sensitive to the changing demographics that we've had in our district and the expectations for all of our students. Absolutely. And junior ROTC is another thing. There's another opportunity, a career path for kids that may not have an opportunity to go to college. They can go through that program and be able to pursue either a career in the military, which would afford them the opportunity to go to college. So I think there's a number of ways that we're trying to be sensitive to that. Dr. Stone, do you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, I can't reiterate enough just about how the CTE enrichment does speak to all students. Every single one of our students have an opportunity to engage in programs so that when they graduate, they'll be ready and prepared. And that's every single one of our students. We just have convened just in the last month a bilingual task force, and one of the aspects of that is how we can meet the needs of our parents that do not speak English, and how we can reach out to educate them about the offerings so that their students can be participating and engaged just like everyone else. So we are sensitive to that and putting things in place to reach all kids.
Hi, just a quick question about the multi-purpose facilities. I was just curious, is that being bid in a competitive environment, or do you just have one manufacturer in mind? I was just curious. I saw the 20 million plus or minus for each.
It would be bid through a competitive process. We're required by law to do that. It'll work out tonight, which was
That's a great thing to work out. want to ask about the libraries. I was here at the last meeting, and I thought, aside from multi-purpose room, I thought about the library more than any other thing. I'm a fan of libraries. We've been in a college library that's one of the most technologically advanced in the country now. But I remember when we enhanced the library here with Pearce. Don't even tell us when, but we were proud of it, and I think are still proud of it. But in college, people have a lot of free time to use it. In the public libraries, there's a lot of time to use it. And you mentioned the kids that you talk to. And then you said, well, maybe we could have it open more hours. And I'm wondering if it were open more hours now. We wouldn't have to wait necessarily to do that. Would it be used anymore? And I'm wondering if my thinking the library is important is just going along with the color of my hair, and that we're saying, hey, we have this big underutilized space, so let's kick that draw out and see if it wakes up. I wonder if we're really spending money in the right place.
Well, I've told the story in a couple of meetings about going to last week to Pearce Park Library, where they just closed their library for a whole year, and spent $5.6 million. It was a year. So those of you who missed it, that spent $5.6 million. And I spent some time there and went to see what kinds of things were going on and why did they renovate their library. And when I went, it's very different than the library that I grew up in Mesquite, where it was very quiet and everyone just went there to actually consume information. Now when you go into the libraries like Pearce Park, what we want for our libraries is for the kids to go in and to create information, to actually create things. And a lot of the things about our current existing libraries really just prohibit that in terms of just the space. And so just specifically what we're thinking about doing is going in and replacing the shelving so that it can be moved out and the space can be opened up. Really lining the walls, potentially lining the walls with device bars where students can actually go in and sit and do their homework. These are the kinds of things that the students said. They told us that if these kinds of things were in those spaces, they would go in there. They would take their devices, plug in their headphones. They would be able to go in and check out rooms, because there'll be some different kinds of glass in rooms where students can go in and actually work together in groups and create, to use it to create more types of projects that currently they're just not using the space for. The teachers have told us that our elementary libraries, if we could go in and actually create space where they could take in groups and group tables around, they would actually take them in and do a lot more. So all I can tell you is that we've been listening to what would they do if we were to come in and transform them, and so that's what's potentially on our plan.
Hi, I teach here. And I know that the library is used by students, especially at lunchtime, before school and after school. We do have extended hours. The library currently is the only safe space for one of our students who has allergies. There's no place to place no food or drink, which is important, especially for the student who has dangerous allergies. My question is about the library, twofold. One, where will there be white space in the school? As I haven't seen that in your plan, and I do think that it is a necessary thing. And second, where are the books?
The books are going nowhere from his former English teacher. The books are going nowhere. So thank you for letting me clarify that. We have a lot of shelving space in our libraries. If you go into the library, you'll see a lot of shelves that have a lot of wasted space. So we'll be consolidating a lot of that space to be able to create more less shelves and more room for the books, but the books actually are going nowhere. In terms of the quiet space, I'm not saying that there'll be noisy, chaotic rooms, all the time. And I can see that before and after school, during lunch, there will be times when students are studying. But whenever teachers need to come in and bring in groups to check out and do different kinds of creative learning, and there will be, again, some different spaces that are going to be carved out, some different rooms that currently right now are just used for conference type rooms, are going to be glassed in so they can be, so we can supervise our students. But if you go into a lot of libraries, and again, when I went into the public library I talked about last week, it wasn't quite, noisy. There were a lot of people that were listening to headphones and things like that, but it was being utilized for so many more purposes than currently our libraries allow.
I just want to add one thing. Part of what's included in that number is not just the library space. Within each of our high schools, it's creating 2 additional innovative instructional learning spaces within the building, and within the junior highs, it's creating 1 additional space on top of the library for collaborative learning and innovative instructional space as well. In the elementaries, really most of them, the library is about putting a space to do that. We have a few elementaries that are a little bit larger that have the opportunity for us to add an additional space on top of the library there as well. So what we would do is work with the space and identify the space. We already have some ideas on that students will be able to use. We have some schools that are already using some of the space, they just don't have any equipment or technology that's part of that. Westwood Junior High, for example, they have a very large space right outside the cafeteria that kids are already using for collaborative learning. There just are no tables, no chairs, no computers, no technology there. So it would be giving them the tools to be able to use that space more effectively in addition to the library space.
Pearce are at. There's 7 of us that have gone through this school or currently in the school. And I really just have a question about the multi-purpose facilities. And is there any ability to get any grant sponsorship dollars to help subsidize costs for those facilities?
We have not pursued naming rights for any of our facilities in the past. It doesn't mean that we can't consider that. The board's position over the years has been to not do that. Yes, it is an option, but it is not something that we're currently entertaining.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know if Dr. Ryder or Ms. Jackson want to speak to that, but the part of the reason for it is I think commercializing the spaces is somewhat of a concern. We've been approached. The Eagle Mustang Eagle Stadium, for example. We had an individual that wanted to have that stadium named after him. He's a former sportscaster for $100,000, and it no longer be considered Eagle Mustang anymore. We felt like the tradition of that school and having it named for the 2 campuses that shared that facility was more important than $100,000. So certainly we can consider it, that's why we're not considering it past. How much commercialization do we want to do? We've had folks that want to come in and run ads in our schools on our monitors and place ads on buildings, and certainly we can generate a revenue stream with that. We've dipped our toe in that just a little bit with our bus fleet just to see how that's received, and we have ads that run on many of our buses. And so certainly it's something that we can consider as we go forward, just something that we have not decided to pursue at this point. So it's open, and we can have additional dialogue about it, we just haven't done it, and that's really the reason for it, just the concern over commercializing the spaces. I was gentleman in the back too.
I'm Ed Inzan. I have one that went through Pearce and is here now. One that kind of Coach Holland and I swim in. We had our kids, older kids the same age, so we went to football for 4 years. So kind of address your question, I agree with you that our coaches are underpaid, but we can address it with the bond. But we can give them the facilities to do what they need to do. And I know a lot of coaches, and they're competitive. Coaches want to win. And they're going to go to the schools and have the facilities to provide the equipment for them to be able to win. Yes, they need to get paid, they need to support their families, but at the end of the day, they're all competitive. And I don't want to say build it and they will come, but I think if we have the facilities, we provide the things for them that they need, and we start putting out some winning programs, the coaches will come. Not only that, people who move to this area, who now drive down Senior Way, and they see a football field that's 17 years old. They don't see an indoor facility. You see a weight room, you can't get 25 kids in it. They take a right of point, they go north, they don't come back. So they never get into school, and they never see what the academics are like. So I think this, to me, this is a pivotal time for our RISD. Either we can continue to look like the districts to the south of us, or we can look to the north, look more like those, and see if we can keep the people here, keep other people that are moving here, to come to our schools, move in and stay. Oh, one last question. On the technology, from either the maintenance piece or the enhancement, does it include Wi-Fi upgrade? Because once a month I get a text that my son has used all his Wi-Fi, and I ask him why. He says he uses his own phone throughout the day, and the teacher doesn't have Wi-Fi.
The answer to that question is yes. The current Wi-Fi system would be maintained with the maintenance side of the house. To do the upgrades and to continue to build that system would be part of the enhancements.
Hi, I have a comment and a question. My first comment is it's very commendable what you guys have done with the last bond. It's actually pretty amazing. So we make it very hard not to go yes for this bond, just for the way you've been managing things financially. So a lot of credit, I think, that should be given to y'all for doing such a great job. The question is, are we mapping what we did with the last bond in terms of academic achievement? So yes, I would like to vote for this bond. I know you want more money, but was the money we spent directly mapped into academic achievement? And I don't know if I'm getting that question. I mean, because if you follow U.S. News and World Report, our high schools have dropped like 200 places. So we did vote for that bond, we spent the money. I want to vote for this bond, but I'm wondering if there's a direct correlation of we mapping academic achievement by any metrics that you want to use. And why should we vote for this bond on that measure? Not on the financial measure, you guys did a great job managing it, but we don't seem to be getting the results on the academic side in terms of achievement. So it's not making sense to me.
We do have a lot of focus on academic achievement and student performance. This year, in terms of our district improvement plan, we increased the goals that more so than we've ever had in Richardson ISD, be very, very specific to target specific areas such as third grade reading, fourth grade reading, and fourth grade writing, Algebra 1. So yes, we are. We do lots of measures of our student performance. All of those, in terms of this bond, all of those can be enhanced, obviously, by our technology, and all of the technology in those particular areas. A lot of the programs and things that we want to do to really attack a lot of areas in terms of student performance, we do need more technology. We do need it in the hands of all of our students. So that is one area. And then I guess I always go back again to that CTE goal. There are so many goals that we have. The CTE one is really about ensuring that every student is ready to graduate, prepared to go on or whatever they want to do beyond high school. And that doesn't start when they get to high school. When they get to high school, those kinds of decisions about what they want to do really need to already be determined. So all of those things really start out in elementary, junior high, and high school. And I think that we have a great strategic plan here, and we presented to our school board this year that really has some really strong goals about student performance. So I hope that you'll just hold on and see what's coming, because I think that you're going to be really pleased with the student performance gains that we're going to be making in the future.
You know, there's so many variables in with that. It's tough to tie one particular thing to that G level. One thing I do want to just tie into is Dr. Stone mentions on the CTE piece of career technology education. What we've seen when we expanded that program is participation shot up significantly. So the number of kids that are getting certifications and pursuing that has grown tremendously. When we started that initiative, that expansion in 2006 on correct? What we did is we surveyed campuses and we asked for input on what programs you wanted to see. And then the change in the demographics, which goes with this gentleman's question, over time, what we've seen is some of the programs that maybe this community, well, Pearce, for example, did 10 years ago, are definitely more critical today. So hitting those 4 priority areas and giving kids more opportunities to be able to pursue certifications and get those certifications and see increased numbers there, I think would be part of that metric that might speak to that. So that helps a little bit. And if I could, I want to go back to this gentleman's question on the naming rights. I forgot one other example of that too. The scoreboards at the stadiums. When we initially installed those scoreboards, one of the thoughts were that we just go get that funding from advertising and do it. And we did pursue that. And what we found is that the dollars were not there to be able to cover the total cost of it. But what we did is we paid for it initially, and then we have sought advertising dollars that generate a revenue stream for us. So that is another example where we've used it. So we are open to it, but I think the notion of it paying for the whole thing is a concern. And I understand what you're saying is just offset the cost. We should pay for the whole thing, but at least cover part of it. The problem I think we're going to run into at the practice facilities is you're not going to get the exposure that you might get at a stadium that an advertiser is going to be as intrigued by there, but it's certainly something that we can look at. So I'm sorry I forgot to mention that earlier.
I'm Rob Hewitt. My wife had taught here for a number of years, and I sat here again at Richardson High. This concerns additional classroom space. I agree that Richardson High really needs it. But Carol, my wife, says they need it here too as well. Did you give much thought in the planning of this to more classrooms on this campus as well as the other campuses?
We have, and we've walked the building with Mr. Bates, and what we've done is identify there are some opportunities within Pearce High School to be able to reconfigure and repurpose some of the existing spaces, some of the labs that may be underutilized, and be able to capture some of that additional career technology education space that we mentioned. And we think that will help address some additional capacity for both Pearce and Berkner is the other campus that's not getting, the other high school that's not getting additional classrooms, but the capacity there is significantly higher. And we feel like we have a lot of opportunities there. But we feel like the changes, the renovation dollars that are in for Pearce to address the CTE portion will help address that.
Hello. I'm one of the people that moved to Richardson from Dallas for the school district. I've got an elementary school daughter. I'm very intrigued by the CTE program you're talking about, because like in Dallas, it seems like they're really pushing college, and I don't think college is for everybody. So what kind of certification licensure are you proposing for these kids that want to offer that?
We've identified really 4, what the state, there are really 16 federal clusters. In Richardson, we've identified 4 that the city of Richardson, the city of Dallas, and actually our regional workforce, they've helped us to identify that these are areas where you're going to have the highest demand for jobs in the next 10 years. And so you're writing them down, so I'm going to tell you what they are. They're health science, so that's really any field in the medical field. So we have certifications where students can go and get a certification to be a med tech, a CNA, so health science. Business, marketing, and finance is the second one, so you can think of all the jobs that are underneath that umbrella. IT and STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And then the 4th one is teaching. And so those are the 4, teaching, becoming a teacher. And so those are 4 areas that really, when we talk about our kids going into CTE programs, those are 4 areas where we are really focusing in Richardson. Did you have another question?
Teaching is certification, but you have to go to college for that. So how is that?
So it's actually the program. So our goal is to have a very robust program here where students here in Pearce can actually get into, and they can start working toward that certification to getting into the program. I'm going to let Ms. Hayes actually talk about that program and what that is here in RISD.
The certification that we offer is for early childhood, for students that want to, when they graduate from high school, need a job while they're going to college to become a teacher. They can work in early childhood with our certification that we have for that. The rest of it is teacher training on the job type training. So our high school students are actually in our elementary classrooms, being mentored by our elementary teachers, learning how to work with students in grades K through 6.
So are those the only 4 areas that you're offering?
We have all 16 programs in RISD. Some of them are at certain campuses only based on facilities. But we offer programs in all 16 areas, and then those 7 particular clusters are the priority clusters that we are working on right now, expanding and making sure that those are available to all students at all of our high schools.
Are any of them having to do with like fixing cars or everything?
Yes, we have an automotive program at Richardson High School currently. We have culinary arts, we have cosmetology, we have electronics, we have all those types of programs.
Every student in the 8th grade, they complete what's called a personal graduation plan, where they actually choose which area that they want to pursue when they get into college, into high school. And we don't think that we want them to make that decision about what they're going to do for the rest of their life when they're in the 8th grade. We want them to have experiences while they are in high school, so that maybe they can have that decision made by the time that they graduate. Because before we had all of these offerings, kids would go off to college and they would just explore and take this class and that class, and a lot of tuition was wasted by a lot of parents. And some of you are smiling because you maybe have had that experience with your kids. But we want to give the kids experiences while they are in high school, so by the time they graduate, they can maybe have that decision firm and they can go toward that path and not waste any time.
Just, you have the 2 options for the Pearce multi-purpose facility, and nobody's addressed whether or not it is definitely being recommended that we move to the interior.
I think we wanted to just give you a transition from what had been communicated earlier. The only option at our meeting with the J.J. Pearce and the Reservation Homeowners Association was the south option. For those of you who have an opportunity to look at the billboard up here, but we've added the north option. The one we would move forward with would be the north option, or the interior option. It is the space that is between the practice field and the school.
Yes, you mentioned the scoreboard. My name's Rob Boyce. Catherine, we spent a bunch of time over there in the press box, announcing soccer games, football games. These guys are really here. It's kind of embarrassing sometimes when we get 2 drops of rain and the scoreboard doesn't work. And, the press box doesn't work. Has there been any thought of trying to get a new scoreboard, fix the press box a little bit? One less thing for the loud and out there for folks from Highland Park and Rain Park to come to school. In fact, we put a national anthem for the Northwest. So we're
The innovations to the press boxes and scoreboards are not included in this planning document at this point. But that's part of why we're here tonight, is to get input from you and write down on the priorities. Not, as we mentioned earlier, not limited to just the 4 priority areas for enrichment that we talked about. We want to, if you have a number of items that you feel like you need to address that we haven't addressed, please include that in the comment card, and we have to consider. Right. Right.
Would it be okay if I answer part of the question?
Sure.
I think what he was talking about is not Eagle Mustang or Mustang Eagle Stadium. He was talking about the Pearce Wheat Field. And we've had had lots of trouble with that particular scoreboard every time it rains. And the B fields and the baseball and softball scoreboards are in the other part of the bond as far as not the original, but the maintenance part.
So is that what you're talking about? I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about that. You're talking about Bayfield? So, right.
Yes, sir.
That part is in, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the primary statements. You're talking about maintenance. Okay.
Under maintenance, yes, sir.
Right. Thanks for the clarification, Bob. She's got the mic right here.
Would the multi-purpose facilities be open for use by the community at all?
Certainly. The priority we would want the priority, just as it is with all our other facilities, to be the students at the school. So as long as it didn't conflict with the student use, campus use there, then we would envision it being open. And not just to Pearce High School, but for example, Mohawk, given the proximity to it, if they had activities that they wanted to use in the facility that would coordinate with schedules on that, we would absolutely see that. Whoever has the mic.
My name is Lisa. I moved here from Chicago with my family. Our RISD was told where we needed to go. We've been here for 3 years. I've got one in Park Hill and one at Bowie, and I also work at Bowie. So I see a great deal of the enrollment that comes through. When we first got there, we were just short of 600. Now we're over 660. How do you address enrollment growth for future and current years with the bond package and continue to add on to the facilities that we currently have to meet our enrollment growth needs, given that this district is such a highly sought-out district?
As I mentioned earlier, when we talk about other opportunities or other funding sources, what we've done is through that capital projects fund, we've been able to go in and address enrollment growth that has occurred throughout the district. Most of it's been to the south, but we're seeing that regeneration occur in the north and the western portions of the district as well. We're kind of already went through the cycle. It all goes on a cycle. And so we have one of the largest populations of over 65 taxpayers in the district in the state. And that's a bad thing at all. But what happens is, as those homeowners seek alternate housing, then you see that it's called regeneration occur. And it's occurring certainly in the Prairie Creek, Canyon Creek, Bowie areas, and then quite a few neighborhoods to the south. So we use a demographic firm to provide us with projections. We do that, we update it annually. It's a 10-year projection window that they give us, but we do the updates annually, and we use that data along with pre-enrollment information we get from each campus in the spring, and then actual enrollment that occurs over the summer to help us formulate the plans for construction. So they don't always, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't always present itself right when you're trying to do your bond plan. And that's part of the reason that we felt like it's been important to maintain that capital projects fund, to be able to allow our board the discretion to react as those demographics continue to change. So using that demographer's projections, the two schools that will exceed capacity, and when we say exceed capacity, we use about 90% of the capacity for the school is the target we don't want to go above, if we can help it. There are times where it goes a little above that, but that's really what we feel like is a manageable figure, and the reason for that is at a high school, for example, your principal needs the ability to be able to develop a master schedule and give students the opportunity to take the courses that they want to take and provide as much flexibility as possible. So if you get above 90% of capacity, you're going to make it extremely difficult for those folks to be able to have any meaningful discretion in that master schedule. So those are the only two schools that are there. We will get the current year updated demographic report from the demographer at the beginning of January. And so if there are other schools that we've been watching closely that are going to hit that figure, we would have the ability to add those campuses into a proposed bond package before the board calls the election in February.
I serve for the last meeting with the Homeowners Association. I'm Jenny Pearce. I live right where the proposed proposed building was going to be hopefully on. But I also used to teach in the district. I have 3 children here, and I did not mention it last time, but I'm very excited about the library and the technology. Unfortunately, due to pay, I don't teach in the district, I teach private, and I feel fortunate enough to be at a school where our libraries are how you see in this video. And it is so cool to see the kids, they're thinking, yes, they're being social, but the interactions that they're having and their creativity and them taking control of a lot of their learning is really inspirational, especially as a teacher, but also as a mother to watch. So that made me very excited, and I feel bad I did not speak about that. But that is a wonderful opportunity for our district at every level. Also, to speak to people moving north and moving to places that have these great facilities and all that. I also hear how people are so disgusted because some of their children are not going to be able to be in the same school as the other one because they're switching schools every 2 years. I think that's another reason that people like myself and others have moved to Richardson because of the stability in the district. I do love the plan to grow each facility as we can, and we're not growing too rapidly. I do understand our constraints with that, but I think that being landlocked, as we say, is also a great advantage to our students. They're not being shifted around. It is awful to be a teacher in that situation. It is awful to have your children separated like that and moving every year, every 2 years, or it's going to happen again. It's hard for them to form bonds and relationships. Lastly, as far as the multi-purpose facility goes, I feel so appreciative that I do feel like we were heard as a community last time when we spoke. One thing I did want to ask, when Rob, you mentioned about the B field and the signs and the scoreboard and all that, I know when we talked earlier, we didn't know if the B field would still be there, or if we went to an alternative plan because of codes or different things, would that still be there? Because I thought, I know the grass is always greener. I do not want it at my front door. I do not want this massive building, that big. But if we do move it to another location, I know that money to move the B field or the softball, or, if we're talking that be needed, is not part of the bond. Is that correct?
No, it can be. It's just that the dollar figure that we provided does not include. There'll be a little bit of a premium with that north location, that interior location. We won't have to displace the B field. It's the space between the B field and the building. Now, what would be displaced is, and you can see a little better on the graphic if you get a chance. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, you might look at that on the way out. There will be one of the 8 tennis courts that have to be relocated. There's, I believe there's a pole vaulting pit that's there, and we will just clip some parking that's there. Those are the only items that will be displaced as part of that. And so we'll calculate that premium, and then that will be included in the total cost.
Hi, I'm Joe. I have one comment about the multi-facility. I like the northern view sign better because not just a better location because it's neighborhoods. I think it's good to like better there because it's close to the school. And it takes 10 minutes to get out there. And then my question is actually about the multi-purpose facility at Richardson. It looks like you're putting it on the West Junior High football field. That's the only football field. What are you going to do for the West Junior High students?
That is unfortunately, Richardson High, that is the only location that will work at Richardson High. So what will happen is students that are currently using that field will use the indoor practice facility if it's included in the bond passes. That's what will happen. They'll coordinate that schedule just like we go over there at Phoenix. But it's a very very tight footprint of Richardson High. They don't have the luxury of having as much acreage as Pearce or Orland or I lost the mic.
No, I have
Okay.
Well, in talking with about expansion and stuff like that, when did the school become too big? Our elementary school in our neighborhood, I'm on the east side, I'm crashing y'all's party. We have 700, 800 students, and I know like Highlands is bursting at the seams, and I know y'all are going to be inundated with those questions tomorrow. When are y'all going to consider, instead of adding on to the schools, building new schools? So I've got a bunch of questions, so I'll answer that.
Well, I mean, we have added new schools. 2003, 2004, we added new schools to address growth. What we found, we had a meeting at White Rock Elementary the week before Thanksgiving. And I kind of half joke about this, but I'm not really joking, and I think it's true. Everybody's in favor of adding a new school as long as you don't change their attendance pattern. We asked White Rock community, how many people were in favor? Let me get all the way through the answer. We asked them, how many people are in favor of us adding a new school? About 60% of the hands in the room shot at it. We asked them again, how many people would then be in favor of changing the attendance boundary associated with that new school? You know how many hands went up? 0. So we are certainly willing to consider that, and we have considered that over the last several years. But there are a number of solutions to enrollment growth that our board has considered over the last several years. And it goes everything from changing attendance boundaries, building new schools, adding on to schools. Overflow is a strategy that we have used, and it's not necessarily a popular one, but it is a strategy. Portable buildings, we used to have portable buildings at a number of campuses. We've eliminated those for security reasons. Magnet schools, we've added magnets over the years. We added the MST and years ago. What the board is considering now, and the administration is considering, is opening up the eligibility at the magnet schools to not preclude the Lake Highlands community from being able to attend MST and Rapid Classical Magnet. So that's
going to increase the attendance at those schools, and it's going to overcrowd those schools.
Well, if there's capacity at both of those schools to be able to accommodate a significant number of additional students. So there are a number of strategies. I think that we will continue to consider building a new school, but and it goes to the young lady in the back who spoke about changing attendance boundaries and having that stability. Again, everybody's in favor of it as long as you don't change where my kid goes to school. And so that becomes problematic. If you build a new school, you're going to change somebody's attendance boundary, unless it's another magnet school.
Well, I think that would be
So certainly
the
that's
ideal situation would be a magnet school that everybody can go to, and that would take pressure, and not just at the elementary school. I mean, Richardson, I'm walking down the halls like this. I stubbed in a classroom and I had 100 feet to get to the bathroom in 6 minutes, and I could barely do it. And I don't think really adding more classrooms, like you said, you're landlocked. And I don't think building a high school for only 500 students is a good use of our tax dollars.
You're referring to the non-traditional program?
Yes. I think.
So let me go back. I haven't fully answered your first question yet. So before we get off of that, I'm almost kind of partially forgetting part of the first question. How big is too big? I think is what to start off with. You know, most of our neighbors use a 750 to 1,000 student elementary model. We have less than, I think we have fewer than 5 campuses that would be above 800 students. So we have talked about that quite a bit. How big is too big? The construction that we completed at White Rock Elementary, Wallace Elementary, in particular, Richland, put them at a capacity number of a little over 900 students. I think generally people are thinking that that is about big enough. And so, you know, it's from an efficiency standpoint, the larger campus is a much more efficient model than a smaller campus. You get a lot of economies there. But as far as just being able to manage it, making sure you're giving students a quality instructional experience, I think that 1,000 student mark would be considered too big. for us. So we're going to continue where we feel like we have opportunities that are appropriate and meaningful. We have available footprint in the campus. Mohawk, I use that as an example. The capacity of Mohawk is very low. The footprint is the land space is very large. We have a lot of opportunity there to be able to add rooms. So we added 6 classrooms over there just to address the projected enrollment growth. So we'll continue with that strategy, but we'll continue to look at the other options as well to address enrollment growth.
So then going on to building a new school and building a bigger school and building a new high school, because we are going to need a new high school. When is the board, is there, I guess my question would be, is there that maximum dollar amount that the board can approve stuff without further approval, such as this $13 million for the alternative high school? Does that make sense?
Kind of. We don't believe at this point we need to add a high school. We believe that we have 2 schools that will reach capacity that we need to add on to. And we have, there is footprint at Richardson IE, the footprint is tight for us to be able to add that. There is footprint at Lake Highlandside to be able to do that and still not have them be, our largest school is Berkeley from a capacity standpoint. It has capacity for over 3,000 students. We would just be approaching that at Richardson High and wouldn't even be that far at.
So what do you take away to have in mind?
Well, we'd have to look at the use of the space on the north side of the building, and anything that comes down would have to be replaced as part of that, because you've got some inefficient use of the land on the north side of Richardson High, and then you need to go vertical with it. So you've got some single-story space back there that would have to go 2-story or 3-story to be able to accommodate the space, but we do not think we need a 2-high school at all. But we do feel like there are 2 high schools we need to add on to. And I want to speak to the non-traditional program that you mentioned. The board, you elect the board of trustees, and so the board has the ability to, the only thing that requires voter approval is a bond election and a tax ratification election. The ability for them to adopt a budget and expend funds is within their purview, so you have that control by electing that board, and they have the discretion to be able to do that. The non-traditional school, that school, I don't have any concern with us doing that. My only concern is why we didn't do it sooner. Because we have hundreds of kids that are either dropping out or at risk of dropping out that we are not serving right now because of limitations of space for the program. We offer an evening program only through our Crystal College Learning Center that does not accommodate the needs of every student. By going with a non-traditional program, that number is down to about $9 million now. By going with a non-traditional program, we'll be able to offer a morning, an afternoon, and evening session and serve about 500 students that we are not serving right now. We are not fulfilling our duty to those kids right now. So I would not agree with you at all about the need for that program. But certainly you're entitled to your opinion, and we want your feedback about it as part of the bond. So if you feel like we need to use bond dollars for some other purpose, that's what that comment card is for.
And then, okay. So we've had this increase in property value throughout Richardson. What's happening to the extra tax dollars that are being collected from those increased property values? Are they going into your capital operating fund? The board gets to, are we getting rebates? What's happening to, is it reducing the cost of the bond? That, okay, well, we're not going to have to take out as much money because we've got all this extra money from the increased property values.
There's 2 pieces to that question. On the debt service side, we are able to retain 100% of the increase in property values. So we've projected 4% increase in property values for this year, and then we use a pretty conservative projection going forward on the debt service. And on the value increase, part of that is to give us some buffer for increases in interest rates. So what happens there is, as your property values grow, the debt service revenue increases, and it allows us to service more of the bonds with a lower debt tax rate than we would otherwise have to have. On the operating side, it works differently. There's a system of, it's called wealth equalization or recapture. You've heard it called a lot of different things. We haven't paid recapture for a few years. We are still considered a property wealthy district though. And what happens with the funding formula in Texas is your increase in property values, you retain those for 1 year. Because the calculation looks at your prior year values to determine the amount of state revenue that you receive. So if they increase by 4% this year, we will keep that 4% for just this year. And then what happens is next year, the state goes in and they look at that increased property value revenue and they decrease our state revenue by a corresponding amount. So it goes away in the very next year. It's called lag. Is what the term they refer to as. So it creates a 1 year positive variance. And what we have done for a number of years is we do not budget that variance into our operating budget because you're not able to retain it. It goes away after 1 year. And you could budget it, then what you're doing is you're assuming that your property value is going to go up by another 4% the next year, and another 4% the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. And the first year that it doesn't grow by as much as it grew in the year you budgeted, you'll go negative, you'll go deficit. And so we have chosen to try to be conservative and good fiduciary agents of your tax dollars to not budget that in because it's not retained. If we were to budget that in and pay the teacher salaries within a single year, and then next year they only go up by 2%, we're going to have a 2% deficit on our budget and have to cut operating expenses to deal with that. So when we have the lag, what we have done is that 1 year lag, we've taken those dollars and we've shifted them over into that capital projects fund to allow our board the discretion to be able to address other items that we do ourselves throughout the years. But that's what happens to the money.
Thanks, Tony. My name is Christine Kewen. I'm going to offer a few closing reflections tonight. As Dr. Wagner and the rest of the staff shared with you all, we're sticking around. We're here for any other questions that you guys may have, and we'd absolutely like to hear your feedback about what we discussed tonight. So we're going to stick around for a little bit longer. One housekeeping item that I want to share with you as well. All of this information is on the RISD website. So if you go to our main homepage, RISD.org, I get that right? Okay, good. There is a link on the top that says bond. It will take you straight to that page. You can watch these videos again. You can share the videos with your community members, with your PTA groups, your homeowners associations, and all of our frequently asked questions are also listed out on that website. Okay, so that's a great resource. So just a housekeeping item. So a couple reflections to wrap up tonight. First of all, let me say I am so extraordinarily grateful to the professionals and the leaders in our district. Dr. Wagner and her staff have done an amazing job of coming forward with some really cool options for us as voters. They've been incredibly thoughtful, and I think I want to key back to the word that we started with tonight, which was transformative. This bond is a little different. You heard Mr. Harperwood talk about that tonight. In the past, when we have talked bond, we have talked things like plumbing and air conditioning and roofs. It's all been maintenance. This bond allows us to dream a little bit. It allows us to think about what we want to invest in for our students, and what we want to invest in for our families, and what we want to invest in as a community. Who do we want to be? What kind of schools do we want to have in the community that we all live in and love? And I know you guys love it because you're here tonight, right? So I appreciate the fact that you guys are here to have the conversation with us tonight. I love that we have the choices that we have. And so if you will fill out those comment cards for us to give us your priorities and let us know what it is that you guys think is important. What do you want the future of this community to be? And I will go back to what Mr. Van Zandt offered earlier tonight. And that is, there are young families who are making this choice all the time. And they're looking at the kind of facilities that we have. And they want to know that they're going to be safe and secure places for their students to get educated. And they want to know that there are places where they have opportunities and choices when it comes to technology, when it comes to career paths, when it comes to college opportunities. So I hope that as you guys are reflecting on the different options that we've heard presented tonight, that you'll take that into consideration. So thanks.
I'll just keep my comments really brief. I know that you've been with us for 2 hours tonight, and I just can't tell you how much, again, we appreciate your comments, your feedback, your reflections. This will help us as we move forward. We have a number of these meetings scheduled. We'll continue to get feedback. Our board isn't anticipating to call the election until February, and then the election will be May. So we have from December to February to continue to solicit feedback and ideas and thoughts. And again, we're going to let you go because I know I'm just reading body language. A lot of you are restless and ready to go home. We will stay and answer any additional questions you have, okay? All right, thank you.
It's still going to